Uh, First of all, I just want to say good morning to everybody. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of what it is that we are doing here at Elevated Missions Prep Incorporated. Of course, my name is Jacqui Wilson, and I am the CEO and founder of Elevated Missions Prep Incorporated. And this is part of our CWS division, specifically concerning the division dealing with Cafe and Chat, which is a forum where we talk about issues as an extension of some of the things that we talk about on our podcast episodes. And this being Minority Mental Health Month, we had planned this for last year, but now we are having it, and I'm excited about it and just looking forward to having the conversations that need to happen. Just to give you an overview of what's going to happen today during this cafe and chat. First, I'm going to give you some statistics. Hope it won't be too long. Give you some quick statistics, talk about the composition of mental health. What are some major events that have caused mass mental health crises for minority communities, and how we're seeing mental health issues show up in everyday life. We're going to talk about some barriers that minorities face. We're going to look at minority mental health rights, how we are specifically helping in the fight, why we are helping. And then we're going to get into our author discussion. That first portion, it should not take too long because I'm going to get right into it. As for me, as I stated, my professional title is I am the CEO and founder of Elevated Missions Prep Incorporated. But also, I am a certified mental health coach, and I'm actually in the process of getting my master's in mental health coaching, and I'm looking forward to completing that soon. We wanted to talk about this because what is happening to people matters, and specifically for us, we have three divisions within our company. And particularly with our Pinnacle division, the Get Heard division, that division is all about helping people manifest their dreams, helping them come to fruition, helping them create tangible products and services that can serve people. Thank you, Angela, for the congratulations. But oftentimes people can't get to that point because they're struggling. And a lot of the struggle has to do with mental health. And thank you, Carolyn. And we need to address these things so that people are moving forward in their lives. And as we get into this, we'll learn that minorities are affected differently than other people, and oftentimes don't even understand the resources that are available to them so that they can move forward or recognize that they need help. So my expectations during this mental health forum for minorities is to really get into the conversation. Again, we're going to hear from some authors who are talking about issues that affect mental health, not just in minorities, but they will also share their perspective of why they feel like it's important to share what they are sharing. So we're going to get right on into it. And we're going to start with some statistics. And these statistics are from NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health. And it says 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental health illness each year. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. 1 in 6 U.S. youth aged 16 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14. And 75% by age 24. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 14. And this is how mental health affects different minority groups. Non-Hispanic Asian, 16.4%. Non-Hispanic Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, 18.1%. Non-Hispanic Black or African American, 21.4%. Hispanic or Latino, 20.7%. Non-Hispanic White, 23.9%. Non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Native, 26.6%. And that's the population as a whole. That's the percentages for the populations within those groups. Non-Hispanic mixed multiracial groups, it affects them 34.9%, which is the largest number on here. So people who are mixed race are, as a whole, the population as a whole are suffering more mental health issues. The average daily, the average delay between onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment is 11 years. 11 years. It takes over 10 years for someone to start having the symptoms and then actually getting treatment, which is ridiculous. The annual treatment rates among U.S. adults with any mental illness by demographic groups. And these are, so I gave you the numbers of the population, the percentage of the population that's being affected, but these are the people who, this is the percentage of the people who are actually getting help. So non-Hispanic Asian, 25.4%. Hispanic or Latino, 36.1%. Non-Hispanic Black or African American, 39.4%. Non-Hispanic White, 52.4%. And non-Hispanic mixed multiracial, 52.2%. Females are more likely to get help than males, but only 40% of males out of this makeup is getting help, and that's out of the numbers of people who are actually needing help, and then 51.7% females. So if we go back to let's go back to the African American group. 21.4% of African Americans are struggling with mental health issues, but only out of that 21.4%, only 39.4% are actually receiving some type of help. So there's a gap there. So if you looked at it as if 100 people needed help, so about 25 people needed help, but only a third of those 25 people are actually getting the help. So it makes you question what is happening with the rest. And we can definitely see that through a number of things that are happening within society. The composition of mental health. And I'm not going to get into too many techniques. I break it down based on my training. I break it down in two ways: chemical imbalance and trauma, and how to cope with that trauma. So when we think about chemical imbalance, it's too much or too little of something. And the classic thought process is like schizophrenia. But also you can have a chemical imbalance with your food intake. For example, did you know that if you ate bananas, it can actually increase your serotonin levels and make you feel happier? And another example is there was a mother who was talking about when she realized that her children were suffering with certain elements, she decided to change up all of their diets because she said they were overweight and they were eating a lot of junk food. She said she started seeing immediate changes in their behavior just by changing their food. Also, a chemical imbalance can be hormonal. Oftentimes you can think of this like postpartum. And also it can be caused by alcohol and drug use. But I actually put alcohol and drug use also under trauma and how to cope, because oftentimes people who are excessively drinking or involved with drug use, it is because they do in fact have some sort of trauma and they're utilizing it as a way to cope. And then when we think about trauma, some things that are common among us that there's some things that our authors will talk about today: death, grief, loss, abuse in any form, generational habits such as maybe even early pregnancy. There's a story that was in the news a long time ago. And these habits that this family had, the grandmother had children early, the great grandmother had children early, the mom, and then the daughter. The daughter, I think, was around 12 or 13 years old, but they had these habits, and it went back for generations, just trauma being taught over and over again. And she did not understand, they didn't understand why these things were happening to them. And what can happen is it can start with one person, and because they don't have the ability to cope or don't have the education to cope, they pass those things on to the people that come behind them, creating more issues. And then also, when I think about trauma, specifically among minorities, uh, we talk about a lot of discrimination because of ethnicity, race, hair, and overall appearance. And if we look in the news today, and specifically here in the US, and I know we have some of our international people here from England and Canada. Again, thank you for being here. Um, some of the major events that cause mass mental health crises for minority communities, and we hear them say their name. We're talking about Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, uh, uh, I think it's Stephon Clark, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Dante Wright, and recently Sonia Massey. And then also, even the name calling of Kamala Harris to diminish her qualifications for the office of president. So we're seeing a lot of this play out we see have these incidents happen, also like mass school shootings. And then the question becomes, how does it affect the minority community? And we will get into that when we talk about the barriers that minorities face. Other ways, how do we see mental health issues show up in everyday life for minorities? Just inability to cope and habits, like it's always been done that way. And I know a lot of you all have heard those things, and it's really creating these cycles of mental health issues, and things that need to be addressed. Some of the barriers that minorities face are, of course, the stigma. A lot of times we don't talk about these things in our families, because they're not good things to talk about. Recognition of the mental health problems, discrimination, a lack of cultural competency. We have communication issues, awareness of services, culturally responsive interventions, financial factors, language barriers, mistrust of treatment, as well as mistrust of those who we can seek treatment from. Um, Mistrust of treatment. I know of a story of a lady who was struggling with some mental health, and this was a long time ago. But one of the reasons that she did not want to continue getting the services, or she was struggling to maintain her services, she shared that during her treatment, they had actually done some sort of shock therapy. And that's scary. um, because when we think about what the mental health issues are and dealing with chemical imbalances or just the inability to really cope with the trauma that we are facing, there are definitely better ways to address these issues. And then also the mistrust of those who can help us receive mental health treatment. Um, think about the case of Sonia Massey. She called the police, and she was calling them to get help. And then what happened to her? She was shot. And okay, so if I'm calling the police and saying I'm having an issue, what is going to happen to me? And they're supposed to be in a position to help. I used to work in law, and when most of my clients, honestly, that came through the criminal justice system or the juvenile system, or even later on through those state cases, a majority of those people had mental health issues. And what I will often do is work to have them receive the treatment that they need versus allowing them just to plead guilty and move into go to go to jail or some other probationary program. Because I figured out a long time ago that the legal system really was not necessarily the right place to address these types of issues. And it takes people like us to educate our communities, to show them that, hey, if you're struggling with something, there is help, there is education. Let's help get you there. And there are different ways of approaching it so that people are not so skittish and wanting to deal with what's going on with them. So, one of the things I think is important to understand about mental health is that as minorities, you have to know that you have the right to heal, you have the right to access medical care and treatment, and you have the right to protect your peace and create healthy environments. And I think sometimes we're in such a place that we've survived so much that it's hard to think that we actually have these rights. And this is something that God just really downloaded in my spirit. You have the right to heal. You have the right to have access to medical care and treatment, and you have the right to protect your peace and create those healthy environments. So how is our company specifically seeking to help? Well, we are working to create connection through authenticity and transparency. We are helping people recognize mental health challenges, and we're creating pathways for them to explore receiving mental health assistance. And the way that we are doing that, and the reason we invited authors is primarily through the books that we are publishing. The books that we are publishing are multifaceted, and they come through our publishing house, which is Get Her Publishing House, which is the pinnacle division of our company. And we are introducing the idea that, hey, if you have gone through this is not just a story, but if you have gone through certain experiences, or if you feel like you need treatment, there you can get it. It's okay. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just letting people know that it is okay. I remember when my grandmother passed away, and I remember Elizabeth specifically reaching out to me. Elizabeth is on here, Elizabeth Cantu, at, making sure, she said, making sure I grieve properly to get through it, because she understands how grief can affect you. And you will hear from her soon. And again, why are we helping? People matter. We do matter. We do matter. Minorities matter. Our needs matter. And ultimately, for us as a company, ultimately what our purpose is, we want people to succeed and be everything that they are meant to be. And we do believe that through people's stories, we have the ability to change lives and create what I call empowerment cycles. So we are creating like generational legacies for success. And what I say is, healthy individuals create healthy families, which create healthy communities, which can create healthy nations. So we need to get healthier overall as a nation, but it starts with us as individuals. Now we're going to start hearing some of the stories from the authors who are present today. They're going to share their name, their book, and how they are helping with what they have written. And then we're going to put everybody's on here in a panel, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. We want you to be actively engaged. I'm going to start with Elizabeth. It is her birthday weekend, and we are continuing to celebrate her. So Elizabeth, I am going to pin you, and I'm going to take myself down. Share a bit of your story about your book. Take about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back later and add you to the panel so that you can answer questions. So I'm removing a pin for myself. There we go.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, my name is Elizabeth Cantu, and currently I am the vice president of a nonprofit organization called Bereavement Network Resources of Sacramento. And what we do is we provide resources to the bereaved. how I got here is my father passed away. It'll be 9 years in October. And I'm a bereaved person of a sister who passed away at 17, 33 years ago. So I've experienced grief at the capacity of it being very difficult, and being able to now be an advocate is very humbling, but it's also very real. I get it. One of the things that has helped me by being part of this nonprofit is that a lot of people don't know what to do when they're bereaved. And so by being part of the Bereavement Network resources, we provide resources to the community and region that is about 200 to 300 resources, from hospice to things that counseling, your medical facilities, that healthcare, etc. However, I've taken that to a different level now. That is one of my hats, but I am also the good grief coaching girl. During the pandemic, I created this creative organization to be able to share personally how I coped with my grief. I am a Christian woman, and one of the things that I remember asking God at the beginning when I was bereaved is, God, why is this happening to me? It was so difficult. However, he said that he would help me through my grief. And he did. Uh, the girl responsible for the accident moved across the street from me. And I remember telling God, why would you allow this to happen to me? I'm your girl. And it was in that transition of surrender did I find that God had a bigger plan for my life. And through those 18 months of grieving and having to have my fits, because it was very difficult, I found forgiveness, and I was able again to have a healed heart. I share that story because it was kind of a pivotal point in my life to realize that our adversities are God's universities. And through that, I have definitely been a moldable piece of clay. Um, Last but not least, this last year, I just had a new birthday yesterday. But in this last 10 months, I was in a car accident. This is a new piece to my story. And I had a brain trauma injury. And I healed through that through art. And I'm having my first exhibition in September. I have a series of about 15 pieces. I never painted in my whole life, but I say that creativity has been my help in my mental health. Backstory is that I do have a daughter who is bipolar. At about 11, I did notice that there was some changes, but I didn't know how to um, delegate that and things like that. And now she is a grown woman and is very healthy. But again, yes, there is a lot of stigma in mental health that needs to be addressed. I personally work part-time for the Center of Disease Control. I take data, I know about data, and data is very important, but our minorities and those that are in the communities that are not so much willing to chat and share about it, it's a vulnerability. And we as leaders need to share that it is okay. We have the right to get help. It's important. And especially since I've had trauma at this recent one, pray for me. I'm very nervous about this debut that I'm getting ready to do because it makes me vulnerable again. But I think that that's the Lord's instrument for me to be able to be where I'm at. And that's how his beauty shines through me. So I'm grateful to be here. And Jacqui, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing a portion of your story. She is so much more to it. Like she said, that the shocking part when I first heard her story was when she did talk about how the person who had caused the accident where her sister was killed moved across the street from her, and then having to deal with that mental anguish and how she went through it. You will hear more from her later on to after we introduce the other authors, and you'll be able to ask her questions. The next author I am calling up is Patrice Martin. Patrice? Hi, Patrice. Yeah,
Good
you're
morning.
muted.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you. Patrice also deals with death, and she's going to tell you about her circumstances and the book that she wrote and why she wrote it. Patrice?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Jacqui. And it was so great to hear, Elizabeth, your story. That was so touching. And happy belated birthday to you. And I admire your strength and I admire your courage. So, yeah, it's an assignment. So go for it. Good morning again. Thanks, Jacqui, for the opportunity. I am Dr. Patrice Martin, and a little backstory about me. My profession is education. I've been in education for going on 26 years now, and have currently launched my own education consulting company just recently, but the our connection, specifically with my experience with grief, is interesting. This journey actually began um, in 2016. So a little bit about me: I do have three older children, and I met this wonderful man, and we were married back in 2000. 12, and it was wonderful. It's my second opportunity. I had a wonderful time thriving and enjoying our experience. We were excited, an older couple, but we were just thankful that we were able to meet and have our love story. But we got married, and the beautiful part of it all is, 2 years later, we found out, not 2 years later, it was 4 years later, we found out we were expecting. We were like, what in the world? Why? Who's having children at this age? So it was just interesting to me, like a modern day Sarah and Abraham. We were just thriving on just loving each other and enjoying our lives. And it was an interesting part. My best friend and I were the ones that were together when we found out we were expecting, because my husband at the time was going through cancer treatment. And oddly enough, 2 months later, my best friend passed away of 35 years. So that was traumatic. And I found out she passed away in the hospital with my husband as he was going through cancer treatment. So you can only imagine, hearing about her death, and it was unexpected. She had not been sick. And looking across the room in the hospital and seeing him going through cancer treatment. Well, needless to say, we were blessed to have a child. I thank the Lord for blessing us. And now I know why, because I did not understand then. But in 2018, my husband transitioned. He lost his battle with cancer. And it is definitely traumatic because, again, a healthy person, a healthy man, and then us having this little 2 year old, and then have to experience death. So it was very traumatic for us. And then having a 2 year old and having to navigate those conversations with her, because I knew immediately, because my father is still living, my parents are still living, and to navigate a conversation having to support a 2 year old through that journey. Well, I will say the hospital did a good job at trying to provide resources and materials, and they gave us this book about grief and the grief journey. But I noticed in that book that there were no brown people. There were no brown people in the book, and also that there were no, the book was not age appropriate. She was 2 years old. So having to read a book to her was not on her maturity level. So I'm an educator, so I'm instantly thinking, it really would be helpful to have something that would be a reflection of my daughter, so being a brown skinned girl, and then having a Lexile level that was more appropriate to her age. So immediately, I just happened to be going through my doctoral program and actually ran across Jacqui and her opportunity to go through coaching and writing a book. And as a result, we birthed a book entitled Mommy, Where's My Daddy? And this is a copy of it. Um, and I know it's a little blurry, but that's the title of the book. Mommy, Where's My Daddy? And the little girl that you see on the front is a symbol of a picture of my daughter. And we wrote it from the premise of Mommy, Where's My Daddy? For children who have lost a parent. So essentially, this was birthed from our own experiences, from our own grief journey, and helping us to navigate the conversation with 2-year-olds. Because honestly, the title came from the question of my daughter. She asked one day, I knew it was coming, Mommy, where's my daddy? She sees children with parents, with their dad, and she's recognizing, hey, I'm not seeing that. So this book has been a labor of love. I did not release it for 2 years. I held it because, again, we were still processing, but we were blessed to launch the book last year. We've been holding various sessions, going to schools, supporting schools that have children who are dealing with grief, offering and going on various television shows, offering opportunity to share our journey. This is still new to us, so we still are navigating. And so I just wanted to share that with you, Jacqui, that this is where it was birthed several years ago. But delay does not mean denial. And this was just God's gift. This was God's assignment. And I thank him for the opportunity to be able to release this book and it is available on Amazon. So I thank you for the opportunity to share our journey.
Thank you, Patrice. Just definitely a powerful story. When I first heard her talk about wanting to write this book, she actually had a couple of different things in mind, if I remember correctly, but that is the one that we worked through during our workshop. And I'm so grateful that people now get to see what I got to see back then. So thank you. We'll be bringing you back up soon. Our next author that is we're going to hear from is Carolyn Murphy. Carolyn, where did you go? I'm looking for you. Carolyn, can you raise your hand? Let me see if I can find you. I think we've.
I'm here. Let me see. You said raise my hand.
Yes. Let me see if I can get you up here. Let me change the view back.
I'm trying to find the hand.
There we go. I see you. Let me get you pinned up here.
I was looking for the hand.
There we go.
Good morning. Good morning again, and I appreciate you inviting me. My name is Carolyn J. Murphy, and I am a Christian life coach with the title of Mind Shift Coach. I am a Tennessee certified peer mental health advocate and an author. I'm the author of God, Why Did You Save Me? The name of my book came from me questioning God, asking God, why did he save me out of the house fire when I was 8 years old? I was born to teenage parents of 16, the oldest of 6. 3 are deceased. One passed when she was 1, and the next 2 died in a house fire while I was keeping them. Being the oldest, I was in charge of keeping my siblings. And so I know I never grieved their deaths. But the book was born out of, it's a snapshot of my life from childhood to adult, being molested and then raped in high school. And I learned now that I was living out of trauma response. Unresolved trauma caused me to live what I call a life of Russian roulette. So that's hurt people, hurt other people. So back then, because of the things that happened to me, the molestation and rape by the male factor, I began to develop a hate for men. And so I lived a life where the trauma response was feeling unloved, unwanted, and unheard. And so I was muzzled. I was silenced through my whole life, just when it comes to our culture, because I was born during a time where children were seen and not heard. And so experiencing the molestation further, muzzled me, but I also learned to wear a mask at an early age and learn how to keep deep secrets. So that ran throughout my life, never really sharing what happened to me. So suffering in silence. So the question, so all of those things caused me to, my prayer was, Lord, let me die in my sleep. That was the prayer that I always prayed. And when I turned 8 and lost the 2 siblings in the house fire, it stopped. And I began to just ask, why did he save me out of the house fire? Because I looked at it, that was my opportunity to die, not to continue to experience things. But on this journey of what I am now, I'm learning the people that attempt and or complete suicide is not that they wanted to die, they wanted to end the pain. And so that's something I'm learning now. So my business is Firm Foundations Community Outreach, and I just deem my business as a bridge between really the Christian population and mental health providers or professionals. And so there's a side of my business which I call the peer side, and I am my ideal client is the Christian faith. So I desire to go into the church and talk to the pastors to see if they can bring on a mental health professional, especially if they're not educated in mental health.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Yes, Carolyn's story is so powerful. You have to get her book as well. We did publish it, but we publish things that empower people, and you're definitely going to hear more from her when we bring up all of the authors. Next person I want to bring up is Angela from across the pond, our London author. Let's see, Angela, there you are. I'm going to unpin Carolyn at this time. Angela, we've worked 2 projects with Angela. Her first project was with Born to Shine, talking about the highly sensitive person trait. And then we worked with her, well, it's coming, it's a new book that's coming called Affirmed. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about her and her book and what she hopes to do in helping people. Angela, you have the floor. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you so much, Jacqui, for having me. And wow, I'm in the midst of such amazing, incredible people. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me from across the pond. Where do I begin? So I'm Angela, like Jacqui introduced me, from London, UK. I'm a mom of 3, 10, 8, and 6. And my journey as an author began way back in 2007, where my first writing was through a poetry competition here in the UK. And that was how I first became a published author. And from that time onwards, life happened. I had kids, COVID happened. But I realized that throughout the COVID period, the issue of mental health was very, how do I say this? It was very prevalent. It was something that I struggled with, especially my children were very young at that time. Schools were locked down and we were not allowed to go out. And so as an entrepreneur, I rekindled my passion and my love for entrepreneurship just around the time when we were easing out of COVID. And as you know, entrepreneurs, we like to add value to ourselves, going for masterminds and educating ourselves, in the direction of your passion or your calling and your purpose. And it was during that time that I got reconnected to Carol, and through that partnership I co-authored with her in Born to Shine. And I believe Jacqui will share a bit more light in that. But after that book, I realized that even as I was progressing in, educating myself in continuous learning, something was always holding me back. And I had to really sit down and pinpoint what it was. And I finally realized that even as I spoke about the issue, in Born to Shine, navigating life for sensitive souls, I found out that my childhood experience, that childhood experience that I had, that trauma, it was still there. And I really decided that I had to deal with it. I had to face it head on and deal with it. And, I contacted Jacqui, and the journey began into writing Affirmed, which will be released soon. And actually, we are about to have a beta reading for it. But during that writing process, and I really thank God that it was Jacqui that, coached me through that process, because I think she used her skills and her intellect as, a certified mental health coach to help me deal with the issues that were coming up. Because personally, myself, I hadn't gone through any sort of professional therapy, but I realized during that time of writing, there was a lot of issues that I thought that were healed, but they were still there. And it got to a point where we had to stop writing for some time because the emotions were just too high. And, it was just, the emotions were just too high at that point, and we had to stop writing for a bit, to go through some healing and then come back to the writing. But the issue of mental health, I think, is something that we really need to talk about. In today's society, is something that I think we shy away from a lot, especially people in the Christian background. We tend to shy away from such issues where maybe it could be due to lack of sufficient knowledge, or not knowing that we really have access to professionals. But is something that we need to unveil, because as a believer, I really know, I really believe that the enemy holds you in bound. He loves and thrives in secrets, and it's time that we let out those secrets. So anyways, Affirmed, it speaks about using biblical principles, to deal with some of the issues that came up with childhood abuse and the childhood trauma. And I really love the process that we went through. One of the things that really stuck out for me is the book cover, which involved me and my children. And it depicts me, holding to my daughter, and in sort of like affirming that child, that inner child. That is how I see it, speaking to that inner child and trying to, encourage that inner me, that childhood me, affirming who she is, giving her that strength. And it's a journey, and it's a book that I believe is going to help a lot of people, that have gone through, childhood abuse, gone through trauma, helping them to heal from the perspective of using, biblical principles to affirm who they are in God, to affirm who they were created to be, even before they went through that negative experience. Yeah, I think I'll just keep it to this end. But thank you so much for having me on here, and Jacqui, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. We definitely appreciate you. I'm going to go to our gallery view now, because we're gonna start talking about some things. And I'm gonna post, there will be some general questions that are posed, that I welcome any of the authors to answer, but also we want people in the audience to ask questions. You can raise your hand. You can drop your question in the chat, and we'll try to make sure we are answering those questions. So earlier I mentioned that when we look at mental health, and that I break it down into two categories, which is when you have a chemical imbalance, which we are commonly see like with schizophrenia, but also it can affect how your food can affect your mental health, as well as hormonal issues can affect your mental health. And then the other part of it is trauma and how to properly cope. I love that Elizabeth actually mentioned traumatic brain injuries. We often do see these with accidents or people who are in the military. And there is an overall struggle, it seems, to get the type of help that you need so that you can be a person that thrives. There are some people who are only interested in getting medicated. And then, you know, I mean, that's what I've mostly seen. And then when you do try to get help, I had an issue with PTSD. It takes you so long to get to the right people sometimes. I think I went to 3 people before I found someone who could help me with my PTSD, which I didn't even know was PTSD until I actually sat down and spoke with someone. And so as you're going through this process, you're not necessarily understanding why you're doing certain things. But I will say this is once you do get educated, which is why I think forums like this is so important, you have the opportunity to change your life outcome. And so we're going to start asking the questions. My first question to the authors, and Angela mentioned her answer already, is when did you first realize that you had an issue that needed to be addressed? I'm going to go to Patrice first. Patrice, when did you first realize that there was an issue? I know you said that you looked at, that you read the book that the hospital gave you, but you didn't see anything concerning little brown girls. So when was the first time that you really realized that, okay, we need help to be able to move through this?
Really, it was when I got home, and we were kind of sitting in the grief and processing all the things that were transpiring at the time. And not only with me navigating my grief and processing my feelings and my emotions. And of course, we've all had this experience when we're going through grief. You're also having to support others in managing their grief. So trying to be strong in a space where, hey, you know, you're breaking yourself. However, I noticed when I got home and we were in the space of, we had already, you know, had the funeral, we had already transitioned to that space. Now it's how do I navigate the conversation, because this was a little girl that was with her dad consistently, and they had a very tight relationship. So you go from being in a space where it was a constant for her to now not being there. So I always was looking for resources and things by which, how could I help support her? Because again, she was 2. So as we're walking through this process, I had to identify, like, Lord, give me something that will bridge the gap. And as I stated before, so there were several things available, but it was not a reflection of her. And I'm a firm believer in, you know, every child should be reflected in a space so that they can connect, they can make connections, and they can really be able to kind of attach themselves to an experience. So that was my thinking. And the fact, again, the educator in me couldn't allow a Lexile level that was probably more for a high school student or middle school student for a 2-year-old. I really had to recognize like this is an opportunity. And those were beautiful books. I don't want to in any way imply that those were not useful, that they were not beautiful books, but they were just not age appropriate for her. So once I got home, started doing the unpacking of our emotions, that's when there was a call to that. And again, as Jacqui stated, there were multiple books that were in my thoughts, but that one was what resonated with me the most because my passion drove me to that. And I kept hearing a calling from the Lord say, hey, anytime there is a space that's not filled, we're all called to fill that space. We all have a passion and assignment. So that's really what was birthed through getting home, unpacking that grief, and then knowing how to help and support her manage it.
Yeah, Patrice, with your situation, like you said, it wasn't just about managing your emotions and how to deal with it, but you had children that you also had to help through the process. Did you have any other support as you were going through that process, or who did support you as you were going through that process?
Well, that's the awesome thing, and I appreciate you saying that. It's always great to have a tribe of people that are able to be there for you, and they know you. They know your patterns, they know your behaviors, and when they see something off, be able to call you on it because grief gets you in a cloud, a mental cloud. It fogs your thinking. And I had a tribe of people. I had church members. I failed to mention that I am a pastor and I pastor a church here in Jackson, Tennessee. But even in those experiences, even as pastors, we go through experiences, right? So I had a church family that was there, that was supportive, that allowed me to pull away. I mean, I literally had to step away for about a month just to get my bearings. And I love the fact that our ministry was able to support me through that, along with my immediate family, my mom and dad and my sisters. They were there because in the scheme of things, I needed to be able to also individually pull away. So having someone else to help, babysit and things of that nature. So my immediate family, my church family, and at the time, my work family was also there. So there was a great circle around me that was able to know me prior and see some of the behaviors and changes and then say, hey, I'm here for you. What do you need for me to do? So I had a great tribe.
I love that. I want to mention two things based on what she stated. One, we all are going to um, deal with something. It becomes a problem when it goes past 30 days and you're still seeing changes or the people not getting back into their regular routine. So if there's anybody in your life and you're noticing that there are differences and it is past 30 days past whatever traumatic event has happened, it's time to see how they can get the help that they need. And the other thing that she stated that I absolutely love is the importance of walking alongside someone. You don't have to necessarily be their solution, but if you would just walk alongside them as they go through, even if you don't understand what they're going through, being a friendly face and offering help where you can. You don't have to be superwoman, superman to come in and take over, but just walk alongside them as they go through the process. Thank you so much, Patrice. Appreciate you sharing more about your story. I'm going to go to Carolyn Murphy. Again, Carolyn has another event. I want to make sure we get a chance to talk to her more. Carolyn, so the Patrice talked about she was in education. So there were things that she recognized that she needed to start getting a handle on. But with your situation, you didn't realize it until much later in life that you were in these cycles due to your trauma. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, the cycle, as I had stated earlier, is the trauma response. And, you live in a trauma response mode because of the unresolved trauma. And then one thing that I've learned recently, that trauma is it ends up being compacting. It's a constant, especially you have one traumatic after another traumatic experience. So they call it cumulating, I believe. And so I just had so many traumatic experience happen to me, but never dealt with them. I didn't experience therapy or counseling until I got to college. And and that was sporadically in my college years. And I was a single mom after that. And so when you become a single mom, you fall to the back. You have to deal with your children. And so not until my sons were grown and gone was when I was able to truly get into therapy consistently, and it even started to grieve all the losses that came in my life.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, and looking at Carolyn's situation, her socioeconomic background also affected her ability to be able to access what she needed. And then if you read her book, she will talk about her realizing that her mom went through trauma and that her mom was just repeating the same things that she had learned. She was living in trauma response. And then Carolyn picked that up and continued that process because she didn't have the education she needed to be able to move forward, which is continuously emphasizes the importance of educating people just so that they are aware. I know for me, when I start breaking down the why of what I'm doing something, that empowers me and helps me say, okay, now that I know why I am doing it, I can actually make a change and move forward with that. That is how I got past a lot of the things that I was doing, those trauma responses, is just learning the why behind why, what I was doing. And it helped me to move forward. And another thing I want to mention is Carolyn mentions in her book is talking about, she mentioned this earlier about the mask. A lot of times we don't even realize that people are going through things. It may seem like everything is okay, but I tell people, if you see anybody who is excessively, what I call excessively happy or excessively sad, there is something going on. People are usually covering up something or trying to keep something in the background. And we definitely want everybody to be joyful and happy, but look for those extremes. And if you find yourself in those extremes because you just don't want anybody to know what's going on, then you may be going through something where you need a little extra support. And I want to go to Elizabeth now, and Elizabeth to share a little bit more about your story of and when did you realize that you needed more help, that that you just couldn't do it by yourself.
Sure. Jacqui, repeat the question.
Yes. When did you realize that you needed more help, that you just couldn't go through what you went through by yourself? You how did you move forward in your trauma?
Okay. Well, one of the things that was difficult for me in my journey is that my children were also young while I was bereaved. And so I really wanted I didn't want that cycle to continue with my children. So I needed to show them how to properly grieve and explain that. And it's very difficult. I commend our colleague that wrote the book at a young age for her daughter. one of the things that I think happened to me is that I maybe had that syndrome of covering it up and trying to be the warrior type woman, superwoman. And I realized that I needed to back the bus up and find ways to talk about my grief and find a safe way to do that. And I did seek support through therapy. And when I did that, it really gave me an opportunity to be vulnerable, and also with someone that was professionally inclined to know about the process of a grieved person. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies in that, where one, covering it up, thinking that everything's okay, not wanting to talk about it. One of our hosts that we recently had here, who's a world-renowned grief expert for my nonprofit, he was sharing how we as Americans, we just want to not feel the pain. We don't want to feel the pain. We want to move on and just be happy. But sometimes it's that sitting in the grief that is going to cause the healing process to begin. And my sister being, a loss at 17 years old, and me being a new mom of a 3-year-old and 5-year-old at that time, it really was difficult. But the beauty is that by that professional helping me to acknowledge my pain, gave me the permission to process authentically. And that's exactly what happened, because now 33 years later, here I am, doing the things I do in the grief process. It's difficult. Anyone that loses anyone, it's like that. It's just a millisecond. And then you're like part of the club. No one wants to be part of the grief club. And that's one of the things that's been hard, is that we all someday will have to walk through that door. And it just has given me the opportunity to just be authentic, be myself, and try to create and acknowledge that, this life is short, so make it count.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I love the fact that she brought up the fact about the importance of sitting through and working through the pain. And we have so many different types of pain. Of course, we mentioned grief, but also it can be loss of a job, loss of success, loss of other relationships, divorce, just so many things. And what do you do with the pain? And of course, on our end, we say turn that pain into a purpose, that anything that you are experiencing, it is meant to help someone else. So don't hold on to it for just yourself. Go out there, if you get the help that you need. And again, if you see someone who is in need and they don't necessarily have the resources, all of these ladies who have spoken today have books, and you can start by just giving them one of those books and saying, hey, I think this may be a great read for you. I'm going to go to Angela again. And so Angela talked about lockdown, and then as she was in lockdown, how it was becoming more apparent that there was something else holding her back. Because sometimes, okay, we talked about the chemical imbalances, and we talk about habits. And so do you have to ask yourself a question? Do you have a habit of, when great opportunities come along, and just not taking advantage of those opportunities? Do you have habits where you're constantly overthinking and questioning what you should do about something? And if those things are happening, it's probably because, again, going back to what Carolyn said, there are trauma responses. There's something that has happened in your life. You've been triggered. And it's so important to understand. I'm going to talk about my book as well before we leave. But you've been triggered some kind of way, and And it's like, okay, now you just don't want to move forward. You're in that, what I call that frozen state. And you have so much more to give to the world, but you can't give it because you're struggling. And so, Angela, can you pop back on for us? Let's see. Can you pop back on? Can you tell people like some of the things that you are talking about in your book? Because her book is about affirmations and just understanding those different feelings that she was experiencing and how she had to work through them. So, Angela, will you share some of the things that you were experiencing as a result of your trauma?
Yes, Jackie, thank you. From the book, you want me to talk about the book, things that I wrote about in the book, or personally?
Some of the feelings that you mentioned in the book is talking about not feeling like you belong, not feeling like you had anything to offer to the world. Why were you experiencing those feelings?
Okay. Okay, thank you. So yeah, like Jackie mentioned, I spoke about some of the feelings like I didn't feel like belonging because my trauma happened with a family member. That was my auntie, who was my mom's younger sister, who was looking after me. Because at that time my mom had traveled to the UK, in search of greener pastures. And the experiences that I had with my auntie made me feel so alienated. And at that time also, I didn't know much about my dad, so I didn't feel that I belonged with my auntie. I felt something was missing. One of the emotions also was like seeking validation from other people. How I became a people pleaser, not being genuine to myself, not being authentic in my endeavors, not being, always seeking the validations of others and the approval of others, doubting my own intuitions, doubting, the value that I had in me, the purpose that I had, feeling like my life didn't matter, feeling like my voice didn't matter because I had been shut down so many times. And I think was it one of the authors also mentioned that, as a child you are to be seen and not heard. And even when I had a valid point to make, even when I had something beneficial to share, I was always shut down, constantly shut down. So because of that, I couldn't trust my own intuitions. I couldn't trust, the ideas that I had, the creativity that I had. So some of these issues I talked about in the book, and I also spoke about how you can deal with that. And I think one of the most important things that we can offer, as we talk about mental health issues, is to making that effort to genuinely help people, making that effort to make other people feel secure, supporting them, making them feel secure in, their endeavors, showing them that genuine love and acceptance, regardless of, differences or backgrounds, just being that support that they can count on. And I think that's one of the great benefits that I've experienced in my journey, so far. Having that support that makes you feel like, yes, you truly belong here. That similarity that makes you know that I belong, I feel safe with this person, or I feel safe with this community, with this group. Yeah.
Thank you, Angela. And she brought up an incredibly valuable point. Validation that what you are feeling and what you're going through is so important from other people. Even if you don't understand what someone is experiencing, just saying, okay, I see you, I understand that you're struggling with something. And then again, how can I support you as you move through this particular journey? Like I said, it doesn't require you to come in and be, superwoman or superman per se, but just recognizing that, hey, you know what, this is a difficult thing that you are experiencing, even if that has never been your experience, or maybe you dealt with it in a different way. And that is one of the things that they taught us as we were going through our coaching certification, is validating, it's validating what someone else is feeling, and being okay that that has not been your experience, or that you may have been able to handle it differently, because we are all in different phases of our life. We often talk about spiritual growth, but there's also mental, educational growth as well, and coping skills growth. How you dealt with something 10 years ago, most likely you're not dealing with it the same way today. And if you are, that may be a sign that you need to get some help. I wanted to share my book called Fearless. I wrote this book because of the mental health coaching background that I do have, and just helping people be able to move forward. We're always going to have something that is confronting us in life, but when I look at my title, we're thinking, oh, usually people think you don't have any fear at all, and that would be perfect in a perfect world. But if we can just start moving to where we are fearing less and able to move forward, that is a great start as well. And so in my book, I just wanted to share what you'll find inside of it. And it applies to any situation that you may be going through. I have in here what I call the fear crushing questions, because again, about recognizing that you're struggling with something. So the first question I have on here, where you will write out, is, it says, today I am struggling with. So you may know that you are struggling with something already, but now you're dealing with all the symptoms of what it is that you're struggling with. So today I am struggling with, and I'm going back to Patrice's example. She said it was after the funeral. They had gone through everything, but when you think about what you have to do, going through the closet, removing the clothes, possibly donating the clothes, that's a struggle. And then the second question I have in here is, when I feel this way, because you need to recognize how it is actually making you feel, so that you can deal with whatever it is that you're going through. And so you have opportunity to write that out. And then also the feeling started. One of the biggest things I think we struggle with is understanding our triggers. Like, I had found a way to cope with my struggle of the post-traumatic stress, but it was re-triggered because of a boss of mine was inappropriate toward me, and I didn't understand why I was feeling certain ways until I actually talked to somebody. And then finally I have the truth is, and so as you are going through this, you have this comparison of, okay, this is what I'm struggling with, this is how I'm feeling, this is what the trigger is, but what is the truth of the matter? The truth may be, as you're pulling the clothes out the closet, I know that I can get through today. I know that I have somebody who's supporting me through this. I know that God is with me. I'm not by myself. So you can write that down. And then I have in here what I call the daily action plan, because we don't need to just sit in those feelings. So your spirit, you want to deal with it, but then how can you help yourself move forward? And I call this the introduction to dealing with your trauma, or even if you have chemical imbalances and you can't control what you're going through unless you have medication. Then what can you do today to move forward? And so today I will, and you make a plan and then you break it down into 3 steps. I know someone who struggles with schizophrenia, and the habits, the things that happen as a result are being argumentative, seeing things that are not there. It created a lot of tension in the household. But part of that tension was because the person was not taking their medicine on a regular basis. So one of the first steps they had to do was start taking their medicine as the doctor prescribed, and then have support system that follow up to make sure that they were taking their medication. And then when they start to have delusions or um, audible, they would also hear voices, is they would have to pause and then ask, is this my illness or is this something else that is happening? And so, like I said, this can really apply to anybody. If you've been through abuse and you want to start moving past that, start working through it. You can use this book. I know there was a question in the chat. Authors, can you drop your book titles and links in the chat box so people can know where to find your books? If you can drop your books in the chat box as well as the links. I know that all of the books are on Amazon. Thank you, Patrice. I see you. But drop your books, and Angela dropped the advertisement about her beta reading for her new book. So we definitely invite you all to come and be a part of that. But I do want to open the floor for any questions that anybody in the audience may have about what you have heard. You can, you're welcome to ask a general question, or you can ask a question of someone specifically. And just raise your hand so I can call on you. Does anybody have any questions? And if you don't want to ask it yourself, you can drop it in the chat box. Does anybody have any specific questions? Also, if there was something that was helpful to you, you can drop that in the chat box as well. If there was a particular thing that you heard today that was helpful to you. I know for me specifically, continuing to hear these types of stories from the authors is helpful in reminding us of the good works that we are doing and the importance of it. I bet you everybody on here has gone through some sort of trauma. And the question becomes, how do you deal with it? How are you managing? Are you just being that strong, that strong person that most of us are called to be? Or are you doing it in a healthy way? Are there people in your life that could benefit from this information? And I do want to share that we will share this recording so that other people will have an opportunity to listen in to what the author shared. We really do want to see people move forward and be successful in life. But how we're feeling about ourselves, what we're dealing with, can hold us up from being all that we are meant to be. Let's see, someone said, Patrice said, she values the transparency. This has been, this has been great. Great presentation. Thank you all for the compliments. And since we don't have any questions or comments, I feel like we have done a very full job of giving an overview of how the minority community is struggling with mental health. We can definitely go deeper into this. We will have more cafe and chats. They may be on this subject or other subject matters, but we just want to invite you to stay tuned. I hear, thank you, wonderful community. Absolutely. I love to surround myself with people who are doing great things to help other people. It really is about taking what you have experienced and empowering the next person. Uh, let's see, one more comment. Any more comments? Any questions? Is there anything else that you would like to see us talk about? You can drop that in the chat box as well. And if anybody, let me see, yes, we are right at the hour. We're actually supposed to end this. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of the authors that spoke today. Let's definitely give them a round of applause. Again, their transparency, their willingness to come and just share their story and be able to create something from that so that other people can benefit. I'm seeing great testimonies, great opportunities. Bless. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We appreciate our authors, and then we appreciate you as well, the audience members. Who said thank you for the invite. This helped me move forward. And we have hand claps as well in the chat. But thank you to all of you who are willing to come and listen, so that now you have more education about how you can walk along with somebody and move forward. Thank you, Jacqui, for having me. Thank you to everyone for your insights and love. You are so welcome, Angela. Thank you again, everybody. And feel free to reach out to us. Again, if you have any questions, we can definitely provide more statistics. And we are constantly working on more material to be able to introduce people to the healing process. So again, thank you so much. And if no one has any other comments or anything, we are going to say goodbye. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.